We start our player profiles, what went right, what went wrong, and what's next for every Charlotte Hornets player. And we start off, of course, with LaMelo Ball. And then it's that time. Doug brought a mock draft to the table. He's going to be going to them all offseason long. You know the deal by now. Let's get to it today. Locked On Hornets.
It's Mock Draft Monday.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. There's Doug, a dancing Doug Branson. You can find him on his substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. You can listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. on Wes and Walker. Doug is dancing, yeah, of course, because he gets to do another show with me. That doesn't need to be said. But I will say, we got to wait for one more segment before we do a mock draft. We have to lead off with the most important story here, which is LaMelo. You know, it's only the future of the Charlotte Hornets and what it means because of what happened with LaMelo. Doug, if we want to set the stage here, what went right, what went wrong, and what's next, just the foundation of who LaMelo is as a player. Steve Clifford was quick to remind us pretty constantly anytime he went up there at the podium that LaMelo was playing his best basketball before he went down with another ankle injury. And, of course, that would keep him out for really the rest of the season. He only played, 26 games this year? It wasn't it wasn't many, even less than that. So, LaMelo Ball as a player, what did you see that went right for him if we want to start with the positive?
Well, he was able, I think, to recover rather quickly from not having an offseason really at all to ramp up, right? Because he had the surgery over the offseason. And we found out, I think, really sort of late into the start of the season and through training camp that he hadn't done a lot of 5-on-5. And so he had that slow start. But it really only lasted 5 or so games before he started to really turn it on from moment one. Because what we would see in the early portion of the season was that, he would have like a really awful half or awful 3 quarters and then be able to turn it on in that fourth quarter to help keep the Hornets competitive or win games early in the season. And then he really got into the groove as the season went on. So that was a positive. I thought he did make more of a concerted effort this season to get to the free throw line and expand his game. I remember that first game that he came back in January from the first ankle injury. And he attempted like 12 free throws in that game. Like he definitely wants to, make that more of a part of his game. The problem for LaMelo is that there's just been no consistency in play in order to allow him, I think, to make the in-game adjustments that you would need to make to draw more fouls, to get the referees to understand what you're trying to do here. So, and really, I guess, in a strange way, it's not fortunate that he was injured, but, we did go into this latter half of the season where the NBA completely changed the rules and really wasn't calling the same kind of fouls that they were calling earlier in the season. And I can imagine, LaMelo playing and staying healthy and being super frustrated by that. And we know when LaMelo gets frustrated, whether it's missing shots or not getting foul calls, that can leak into other areas of his game defensively. He can rack up foul calls. So, he didn't have to experience that. So I guess it's fortunate in one way. It's unfortunate that he didn't experience that because that might be the NBA reality for him next season. He's going to have to start all over again. But he did have some big games. When the Hornets won big games against good teams, he was involved, right? You look at Boston, the win against Indy, where he had the game-sealing steal against Tyrese Halliburton. And then Minnesota, he had 13 assists in that big win where Cat was trying to score 70, and they were really fooling around. But LaMelo was a big part of that win, too.
Yeah, I think if we look at some of the trends upward for LaMelo, we knew that we wanted him to finish better at the rim, take a lot more shots at the rim, and defend better. Get to the foul line was also a part of that. I think those were probably the first 3, and then the foul line, him getting to the foul line was a little bit in there as well. But if you look at just how much he shot at the rim this year, Doug, if you look at the frequency, that actually went up. He got to the rim and shot a decent amount. He was in the 67th percentile among point guards, according to Cleaning the Glass. I'll take that, and that we just wanted to see that continue to ascend. The finishing has not been as good, but at least he's taking more shots, and I don't say that lightly. Like, I know it sounds like a backhanded compliment. It's real. Like, I'm glad that he's taking those shots at the rim, even if he's still not hitting at a high clip whatsoever. He's still one of the worst in the league at that, and that's something you hope comes along. But at least you get there, and you got there this past season. Hopefully we can see that in a larger sample size next year. And if we can just talk about his defense for a moment, this is somebody that's also going to continue to gamble. I think there were times where he got better. Steve Clifford will tell you that he got better defensively. I don't know if I saw like an outright improvement from him where it's just, okay, bona fide, well, he's starting to figure it out. But I thought there were moments, and then we can go to the Halliburton play. He won on a defensive play. What is funny is that Clifford, at the very end of the season, during the exit day interview, said, look, I think that was just Halliburton loses his handle, and LaMelo got lucky.
Come on, Cliff. Come on. Everybody's giving you your flowers right now on the way out the door. Come on.
And he said so with a smile. He was laughing, so all in good fun. But I do think, Doug, that he got a little better at the stuff that we wanted him to improve on for the most part. And the stuff he was already doing well, like he was playing at a high level before he got hurt. The shooting percentage was down from 3, but he was taking higher volume, and that's small sample size where it started to go, it gets a little wonky. Yeah, man, LaMelo, he was an all-star when he got over that beginning of the season rust, and before he got hurt and then came back and then got hurt again. But there was a significant portion of his stretch, his season, where he played like an all-star that could have been there in the final 15 at the all-star break.
I think you're right on the defensive front. He's able to turn it up in big moments, whether it was against Halliburton. He had a few possessions, crucial possessions in that close win against Boston where he was able to disrupt what Jason Tatum wanted to do there. And really, for your star point guard, who's going to be one of the driving forces of your offense, I think, if you're thinking in like a postseason kind of way, that's really all you're asking for defensively is can you not be awful for most of the game, and then, can you turn it up in close situations late? And so I think he's proven that he has, all of the tools to accomplish that. And what the Hornets have to do, I think, as an organization is continue to find ways to put players around him that can complement him defensively. And I think there's one in this draft, in fact, that they could target to do just that. Brandon Miller, obviously, as he gets bigger, stronger, he's going to help with that as well. And so, they just got to continue to look at ways to do that. And I guess the one thing, the strange silver lining that you can take away from his injury history as it pertains to his ability to attack the rim and to get better in that area of his game, is that his ankle injuries have been kind of all over the place. It's not a situation where it's like every time he's had an ankle injury, it's because he's dry, an MKG situation. Remember MKG would like drive and throw his body all over the place, and we would go, man, maybe his style of play is just not conducive to him being healthy. That's not really the case with LaMelo. I mean, his last one was on like just a behind-the-back kind of crossover dribble freak thing.
We got some freak ones, yeah. Well, especially the fan on the court. We remember that one where he stepped on a foot. And P.J. Washington landed on LaMelo's foot another time. We've had some weird ones.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying is it shouldn't affect his confidence in his ability to play certain parts of his game. Maybe the jump shot. We could talk about that and some of the things that went wrong this season, but that would be where I would be more concerned, less him going to the rim. I don't think that's going to bother him at all.
Last thing, just in kind of hanging out in nerd corner for a second, I was looking at some of the mid-range numbers here, Doug, and the short mid was actually way up, and that kind of reminds me of his floater that he goes to a lot. And I remember this, not this past season, but 2 years ago, LaMelo would roll, he would go to it, and he would miss a lot of the time, but he would still go to that floater quite a bit, and it felt like he was hitting that more when he went to it. In fact, if you just go to the short mid, he last season in 2022-2023, he was 48 of 130 attempts. This year, he made only 5 less attempts on 5 less shots on 40 less attempts. So he was much more efficient at getting to that short mid and then hitting those shots. He was pretty good there, which is nice. Like if you're not going to be great at finishing at the rim, well, if the next best thing as far as proximity is short mid, he was pretty good at that. Great. Like maybe that's just what you're going to have to do to get by in some of those times that you've been struggling. And then all mid-range jumper, he was starting to improve a little bit there as well, just all across the board. So I think that really helped him.
Totally, and we'll stay in Nerd Corner for a second and give you one more stat. He led the team in estimated plus-minus. Dunksandthrees.com has their EPM number, and he was plus 3.2. He was one of only 2 players that had a positive EPM for the Charlotte Hornets, and the other one was Mark Williams. So if you want to know why the Hornets season went awry, I mean, there you go.
Yeah.
But he was a plus 4.1 on the offensive end. That's despite, like, if you look across rim, mid-range, and three-point percentage, he was either average or below average in terms of efficiency offensively this season. Now, a lot of that, I think, was the slow start at the beginning of the season, and he had a few inefficient games right there at the end that I think brought those numbers down. But it was really, I mean, his ability to play make. His assist percentage at 39.3 would have been, if that had held for the entire season, would have been tops in the league. He was just a monster in playmaking, and his steal percentage was super high too. That started off slow. We were wondering if that part of his game was gone, but it came roaring back as he got in the groove. He was a big impact defensively there as well.
That's what went right with LaMelo. We have the bad stuff to get to. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just
We'll get
yet.
to what went wrong at the end of the show, but we have the mock draft for Doug. We can't wait any longer. We'll get to the mock draft here in just a second on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I've been told I have a competitive side. Yeah, I know I have a competitive side. Hell, we all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly. Now I can also heist their vaults for riches for myself. And the leaderboard showed me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game, join your friends, download Monopoly Go now, free on the Apple Store or Google Play. This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. Plus, you can customize your own spot. There's plenty of deals that they're offering. So what you can do is you can get last-minute deals, flash deals, zone deals, all-in pricing, seat views right before you purchase, so you have all the information you need before you go out to the arena or the stadium. Plus, it's not just sporting events, too. It's concerts, it's theater, comedy shows. There's a bunch of different shows and events that Game Time offers tickets on. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Doug, it's happening a little more frequently. We're getting mock drafts. ESPN gave us a big one not too long ago, had the Charlotte Hornets taking somebody interesting and maybe even somebody local, maybe Catawba County and my fellow crib mates. They would know what player they had the Hornets selecting in the latest mock draft. We got a few that we're going to get to. Is this going to be a thing? Mock Draft Monday?
Mock Draft Monday! I hope so.
You have the jingle already.
You know what?
I can't go against you.
I'll say this, not just Mock Draft Monday. I'm willing to make a promise to the listeners right now that from now until the draft, I will bring you some kind of mock draft once a show. Boom. One mock draft every show that I'm on from now until the draft. What do you think about that, Walker?
Well, you're promising them as if the people have been asking for this.
They've
constantly.
been begging for it. They've been begging. My phone is blowing up. They've been begging. They've been like, "Where are the mock drafts? We are just months away from the draft. Where are the mock drafts?"
This seemed like the promise nobody asked for, and yet you still are, all right, okay, if you guys want it, I'll give it to you. Fine, whatever. This is what I'm going to do. All right, well, you have our first mock draft, at least for Mock Draft Monday. It might just be a mock draft every day. What do you have for us here today?
All right, this is the most recent one that I could find. It was updated on April 18th. This is Fox Sports' Jason McIntyre, co-host of the Herd. Okay. So we're starting off with a very respectable mock draft from one of the leading networks out there, and they have the Charlotte Hornets in the 4th position. All of these mock drafts are, for the most part, going to assume that the Hornets are going to take the 4th spot, and that is going to be Stephon Castle, wing from UConn. And Jason writes, the 29th ranked defense goes with the best defensive wing in the draft. Castle was totally dominant in the NCAA tournament, especially defensively. You have to wonder if his offense is underrated because he was on such a stacked team. What do you think about Castle?
Yeah, I'm not going to give you great evaluations right now, to be honest with you. I have not done a ton of work on these guys. But from watching Castle, I got to know him a little bit more in the tournament at the end of college basketball regular season. Yeah, I mean, if you look at what he did against Alabama and against Purdue in the Final Four, he was 7 of 13 against the Crimson Tide, 21 points. He was 6 of 13 against Purdue with 15 points. He hit 1 of his 4 attempts from beyond the arc, did not shoot well from distance in March Madness and really the entire season. So that's something that I think people are worried about. It doesn't look like his form is completely shot. I mean, it looks like there's something to work with there, and so maybe he just needs a lot more practice to shooting it. There is a little bit of playmaking to his game, 4 assists, 3 assists, 5. Those were a couple of the games that he recorded once he got to March. But overall, I think you can see him as a slasher, and defensively, that's what's going to help. I've been key on wanting to get somebody that can help and not be a liability on one end of the court or the other. But maybe Castle is this guy that can come in, be a defensive stalwart, and then just be a slasher that moves around quite a bit. Other playmakers find him in space, and he can do just enough of everything else offensively to not make him that liability. So Castle, at least surface level stuff here, Doug. Castle seems like a guy I like.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is an interesting draft for the Charlotte Hornets because, look, if they get the number 1 pick, this is – a lot of people are making the joke that, like, this would be the year that the Charlotte Hornets get the number 1 overall selection because it's a weak draft, question marks all over the place, even all the way up to number 1. Although I think a lot of people are gravitating towards Sarr in that number 1 spot, 7-1, can do a lot. The shot is big question mark. But – you know, if you're looking for for some help on the defensive end of the floor, I think there are several names that you would feel comfortable taking at 4 that go. I mean, Tankathon has Castle at 8, has Holland at 10, has Basalis at 5, has Klingon at 4. So, like, I think there are a lot of players that the Hornets could look at to target defensively for upgrades. That you would feel comfortable reaching, and that you would have to be locked in to several players that were only focused on the offensive end of the floor. But speaking of the offensive end of the floor, I did find the ESPN draft really interesting. Their latest mock draft from 4/17, so only a day before the Fox Sports draft. Jonathan Gavoni and our guy Wu on the mock draft here, and I think Jeremy Wu makes this selection. And it is really not prioritizing defense, more prioritizing, I think, a little bit of the offense a little bit here is Rob Dillingham, the Kentucky point guard,
right,
age 19. And he writes, with the Hornets transitioning to new front office leadership, an open-minded approach to this selection could make Dillingham intriguing. The shooting acumen he demonstrated at Kentucky provides a blueprint for how he might fit alongside LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. So what do you think about that selection? Dillingham, would you be excited if they went with another point guard?
Yeah, I mean, again, this guy is from Hickory, and so I actually played against his older brother in middle school. Got to play. He was really good as well.
You guys are basically family then.
Basically, yeah. So I would get the inside track on bringing him on the podcast, and so only because of that, I would be very happy about this. No, the profile at least the style of player is somebody that I wouldn't necessarily want at that spot. So if you're talking about a smaller guard that, yeah, he's a great shooter, and I'll take that as long as that translates to the league. But if you have LaMelo, if you have Brandon, and if Rob Dillingham isn't necessarily somebody that's going to be good defensively at the next level, we already have a few of these guards that are offensive focused. Nick Smith Jr. is somebody else that comes to mind. Now, Nick Smith Jr. isn't somebody that should deter you from drafting somebody else like him with that same profile. If you think Dillingham is better, then by all means draft him. But I think, Doug, I'm more so inclined to select the wing or the defensive laden player instead of the guy that shoots, even though he shoots really well from three. Like I'd prefer Castle, but again, this is all surface level stuff right now, but that's kind of where I am approaching the NBA draft process.
You want one more?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, this one comes from the Ringer. Now, this one hasn't been updated since April 4th. I mean, come on. KOC. Kevin O, what did I call him last year? Kevin O'Con Man. Kevin O'Con Man. Come on, dude. Yep. Let's update these mock drafts. You know, people are excited. They want the mocks. So this one hasn't been updated in a while, but he has the Hornets selecting Dalton Knecht from the University of Tennessee, that big offensive powerhouse there. And KOC writes, the Hornets already have two primary shot creators in LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. And he said it wouldn't hurt to bring in Topic. Wait a minute. I may have this wrong. They may have had them selecting Topic instead.
Okay.
And so, let me do some research on here. What do you think about Dalton Knecht? Let's start there.
I know that's one of the people I think a lot of Hornets fans would be excited about, and that was maybe when they thought they'd be selecting like 6 through 8, which it doesn't really matter, right? I mean, if you're going to be selecting at 4, maybe it doesn't matter as much if you draft somebody a couple spots high. He's got the offense taken care of. He shot 39.7% from three. He shot really well at Northern Colorado before he transferred to Tennessee and became, I believe, SEC Player of the Year. Yeah, he had a great season. I think this is more so of you're focusing on offense, not nearly as much on defense, and I'd like to have somebody that plays well on both ends of the floor. But Dalton can really shoot it, and if he's one of these guys that can play with Brandon Miller and LaMelo. With Brandon at the 3 and Dalton at the 2, because he's listed at 6'6", then that's a lot of shooting, and that's really tough to be able to go out there and defend. And so I'd be open-minded to it. I think if I had to rank the 3 players you mentioned right now, without knowing Dillingham's ceiling, if we think he's got a crazy ceiling in the backcourt, then by all means get him 4. But I think the guys I like the most, it's Castle. I would rank Knecht 2nd, and then I'd probably go Dillingham 3rd, just based off of what fills the biggest needs for this Hornets team. That's how I think I would, at the very beginning, start to rank these guys.
And KOC has Castle going number 2 overall in this mock draft, so he's high on Castle right now. So I figured out where I went wrong. I was looking at the 4th slot, but this one's so old that they have the Detroit, or maybe he just randomly, I think maybe he just did a random draw here. And so the Hornets in this random draw, this lottery draw, got the 3rd overall pick and did select Nikola Topic from Serbia. And this is not Nikola Jokic. This is not Nikola Jovic. This is Nikola Topic. And Topic is more of he compares him to Goran Dragic. But, when I watch him play, and I actually have watched Topic play, I've watched a little tape. It's one of the first tape runs that I did because this guy looks so interesting. But he's 6'6", 200 pounds, not even almost 19 years old, and will be by the time the draft rolls around. But he's got a little TJ McConnell in his game. And you've got multiple now mock drafts saying Hornets maybe look at the guard position, and I wonder how much LaMelo's injury history has some of these mockers out there looking at the Hornets maybe filling out the guard position, something they really opted not to do. They didn't take Scoot Henderson because of the fit issue with LaMelo Ball, so they go Brandon Miller. That looks like a great pick right now. But maybe now you come back after this injury history and go, hey, maybe we need to not have any things binding us here. All options should be on the table at this point, even though we just signed this guy to a max contract.
Yeah, last thing, when you bring that up, I'm fine. Draft best player available, really whatever position they play, with at least some regard for LaMelo and Brandon. But if we're looking for the backup point guard, Doug, don't you want somebody with experience? I mean, we talked about the Tyus Jones thing, how we'd be willing to dish out a lot of money to just go take care of the best backup point guard in the league that's widely regarded as that. So I'm getting Tyus, or I'm getting somebody else that we feel really good about, rather than drafting somebody to immediately take over backup point guard role, especially because we know how hard it is to transition to the next level at that specific position. So we would go, the next couple of years thinking, man, if we just had a backup point guard, I hope that they wouldn't draft somebody at that spot and then think, okay, now we've done enough work. Now we're good for the next couple of seasons, and it doesn't really allow them to cook. Like, they have to be a finished product right away. To me, I'd rather just go spend the money in free agency so I have that peace of mind that you've needed the last 2, 3, 10 years.
Well, you've got Micic on the roster, too, who was pretty stellar at playmaking. Some question marks with his shot decision-making and how – but the question with him would be, like, what role would satisfy him on this team, and is that role going to be available for him, or would you rather invest in maybe a younger product that's going to be okay with LaMelo Ball dominating a majority of the minutes and that person having to come in and play some spot minutes? And as you've already mentioned, Nick Smith Jr., where does he factor into all of that? So they've got a lot of pieces to juggle here, and I think the question for them is going to come down to, do you find somebody that is a defensive fit that you feel like can make an immediate impact? Because to me, that's one of the few areas where you're going to find a player to make an immediate impact and get minutes early, is a guy that can help you on the defensive end of the floor. If it's shooting, if it's playmaking, if it's, even block shots, because you're going to be getting, Mark Williams back into the system. You've got to find minutes for Nick Richards if you don't move on from him. And so, even that are areas where you would look at a project that you would be developing for 2-3 years down the line.
All right, let's get back to LaMelo and continue the point guard conversation. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
We'll continue the player profile. This time we'll discuss what went wrong for LaMelo Ball. That's all still to come here on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You can get in on the playoff action, the NBA playoff action, and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. That's it. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball, hockey, college basketball entries. College basketball used to be able to do that, but now there's still plenty of sports out here that you can try. Prize Picks has something for every sports fan, from basketball and hockey to League of Legends and everything in between. You can pick LeBron, Caitlin Clark once the WNBA season gets rolling, Connor McDavid, and Jude Bellingham, all in the same entry. Prize Picks even offers injury insurance. This is my favorite part. So that if your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured for basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return in the second, Prize Picks will have your back and not count that as a loss. That's a big deal. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, let's get to the what went wrong with LaMelo, and I guess we should just start at the injuries here. We can just go there. 35 games logged 2 years ago. We wanted it to get significantly better. We wanted to see him more, and we did not. We only saw him in 22 games this year, Doug. He got injured, missed a lot of time, tried to come back, got injured again, and then eventually wouldn't come back at all. And we kept waiting for LaMelo's return. I don't want to say we got conflicting reports or that we got conflicting comments, but it was a little bit of a roller coaster trying to figure out if LaMelo was going to return at all, especially in like the last 40%, last third of the season. But any conversation with what went wrong with LaMelo has to start there, the second straight season and playing 35% of the games combined each of the last 2 years.
Yeah, you have to. It all starts and ends there for him. His. I don't know if you want to say his career is like completely off the rails, but it is really threatening to be that. People have stopped talking about him, in the national media, and a lot of questions are starting to crop up. And now he has to go and answer all of those questions. And that has to be, I think, a lot of added pressure for him going into this next season, because there were, even before the injuries, there were a lot of things that he needed, and I think he would admit that he had to address in his game to get himself to sort of that all NBA level. And, all of that has been stunted by his inability to stay on the court. And if he has, I was thinking about this morning, like, if he has a great season where he is healthy, they're going to be writing profiles about, like, the thing, whether it's ankle braces, whether it's strength and conditioning. They're going to be writing about the person that helped him or the thing that helped him. They're going to be GQ profiles. There's going to be SportsCenter profiles about, like, what saved this guy's career, similar to what we saw with Steph Curry early in his career. So I'm hopeful, excited about the prospect of that thing existing within the Hornets organization, because they've got to get this figured out, man. This guy is about to start a max contract and hasn't played 60 games in the last 2 seasons. Like, if it continues down this path, it's troubling. And as we've said in previous episodes, I don't know how much more leeway he's going to get from fans, especially when the communication, I don't think, has been stellar about what he's willing to do, what he will do. And I think really whether it's LaMelo or the team, someone, as we approach the beginning of next season, as we get into media day and training camp, that's a long way away, somebody has to craft a narrative about what they did this offseason to get LaMelo Ball ready to play and ready to stay healthy. They've got to work on that narrative, because I think fans need something to hold on to when it comes to LaMelo Ball, something to ease their concerns a little bit. Maybe that's only going to be eased once he does play 40, 50 games in a season. But I do think that they've got to be thinking about what is that thing that's going to help him stay on the floor.
Enter Jeff Peterson, maybe. It feels like he's the prime candidate to be the guy that fixed all of the issues, because if everything starts at the top, then I guess if you wanted to include Gabe Plotkin and Rick Schnall, but if Jeff Peterson is the guy that is basically running basketball operations and he gets rid of the training staff, he hires new guys, LaMelo's healthy next season, I can see that story. Hey, once Jeff evaluated everything, I knew we had to do something. And I remember from my experience back with the Nets that we did one thing with this one guy, and I thought, hey, maybe we can apply it to a star. I can see the story written that way as well. We just haven't seen him play basketball a lot, Doug. I mean, I was thinking about it too over the weekend. I saw a highlight or a montage of LaMelo rookie highlights and his second-year highlights. I don't know if other people feel the same. It does feel like it was so long ago that we saw him play at that level, where he was really good his second year. If you look at his numbers, and they were sensational. That's why I hate when people say he was only an all-star reserve when he got in. That happens, and the numbers were deserving of an all-star spot, totally deserving of what he did. And then the last couple of years, like, think about it. You're talking about a 7-game stretch, 7 games in January that we saw him last. Before that, you're going a month's worth of games, seeing him play 15 from October 25th to November 26th. 15, you miss a lot of time, you come back in January, you play 7, and then you don't play again. Then you combine that with what he did last year, or 2 years ago at this point, and you're talking about 35. Like, you don't see him play. And when you don't see him out there on the court, it's hard to remember on a large enough sample size just how special this guy can be. Those highlights, they were crazy. Like, they're so much fun. It's why we all loved watching him play in the first place. But man, this is gonna be his 5th year. It is that's nuts. Like how fast time can fly. And LaMelo is a good example of that.
Well, and we can't forget that a lot of that highlight play, that amazing play, the consistent play that we saw, some of that wasn't in front of fans. Right? I mean, he played in that weird era.
That's why he got drafted early. Yeah, it was a weird timing where he got drafted in or maybe that was, I think it had something to do with that, right? He got drafted in November.
Yeah.
Something weird like that.
So I mean, you have to take that into consideration too, that fans in the arenas haven't actually gotten to see as much of this player as they would have had he not been playing in that era. So yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing, and we really haven't seen him tested in the fires of the playoffs, right? I mean, I'm watching Anthony Edwards go back and forth with KD, the trash talking, and the only thing that I can think is what could have been. I want to see LaMelo Ball in that kind of situation, because that's where you ascend to all NBA status. That's where you ascend to legend status. That's where players are truly tested. And the Hornets are not going to even get close to that if he's not healthy in the regular season. So, I think it's disappointing that he didn't come back, that he didn't, try to play through it, or even if he was like 90%, that's all disappointing. But at the same time, if he can come back and he's healthy next season and he stays healthy, then I think it'll all be worth it.
Yeah, I mean, the guards in that 20 – so I'm looking at that 2020 draft to see what date it took place. November 18th because of COVID. And then you're starting to play basketball within a month's worth of time. And it was a crazy start to his career. Gets injured there, too, with his wrist. And, I mean, I guess we just kind of moved on from his wrist. I guess 10 ankle injuries will do that. And so hopefully everything is healthy when you come back. But here are the guards selected in 2020, Doug. Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Maxey, Tyrese Halliburton, Desmond Bane. All of those guards have some level of postseason experience, and they played crucial roles and are even the lead dogs in some scenarios. All of them. Every single one of those guys that I just mentioned. And Tyrese Maxey, I guess I don't remember how much Philly went deep with him playing a significant role, but we've seen him blossom this year. And it's the Hornets, man. It's the Charlotte Hornets. It's LaMelo not being able to stay healthy. It's unfortunate all the way around. That's what went wrong. That's what's gone wrong so far. Hopefully we have a lot more of what went right than we do what went wrong when we do the future player profiles for LaMelo.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many storylines yet to be written. I mean, I think that's the thing that keeps me going, is that there are so many things that we can talk about and write about when it comes to LaMelo Ball, because the potential is all there. I just hope that he's willing to do whatever it takes and work through. Look, it's not going to be easy, Walker. It might be uncomfortable at times doing the things that he's got to do to get back out there, but we know he loves the game. We know he wants to be on the floor. And, it's really just going to be down to him. Is he willing to do what it takes to stay healthy? And, yeah, you're going to sprinkle in some luck and some fortune into that as well. So fingers crossed, because beginning next season, the Hornets owe him $35 million.
All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods. That includes YouTube. Also, make sure you check out Doug on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Listen to me on the radio, WFNZ 92.7 FM. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.